This is Mission Control Houston. We are now getting live view of the Space Shuttle aircraft carrier with Endeavour strapped to the top with its fly over Ellington Field here in the Houston area. The aircraft with Endeavour will land at Ellington Field this morning and will stay overnight before departing at dawn on Thursday to make to begin its second leg of its road trip to California. Joining us on the phone now is the last person ever to fly Endeavour and safely land the orbiter after a 15-day mission to the International Space Station as commander of STS-134, the second to final space shuttle flight, retired NASA astronaut Mark Kelly.
Good morning, Amiko. How are you?
Good morning, Mark. Thank you for joining us here today.
Yeah, no problem.
Well, it's a bittersweet day for folks here at NASA and even for the American public as we watch the youngest of the space shuttle fleet make its final flight to its eventual final wheel stop. The space shuttle has proven an extraordinary capability that did its job and then some. Mark, you flew to space 4 times aboard the space shuttle, twice aboard Endeavour and also twice aboard Discovery.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I flew Endeavour on my first flight in 2001, and then again last year on its final flight to space. I think Endeavour went into space, I think, 25 times. So it was certainly, one of the highlights of my astronaut career to have the opportunity to fly that final flight.
So your first flight was aboard Endeavour during STS-108. It was the final shuttle mission of 2001 that lifted off on December 5th that year. Can you tell me a little about that first flight experience?
Yeah, we brought up an MPLM. It was STS-108. The MPLM is, the logistics module that gets attached to the station, unloaded, and then reloaded with cargo. We also did a crew transfer. So 3 crew members went up with us, and 3 more went down. In total, we flew 3 cosmonauts on that flight, 1 up and 2 back. And it was my first time in space, so it was really an exciting time in my life to have the opportunity to do that. Not many people get the opportunity to fly in space, so it's something all of us astronauts really appreciate and cherish.
Great, and I understand there were a couple of delays on that flight.
There are always delays. It's part of the business. It's
right?
Very, very rare that we go on time. I think I did once, 1 out of my 4 flights. So it's an expected thing. We don't get too excited about it. I think the biggest downside for the crew members is just thinking about all the guests and people that have come to Florida to watch this wonderful spaceship launch into space and then not get the opportunity. But it's something we all expect. Just like Endeavour trying to fly to California with the weather issues that they experienced, but it's now on its way. I'm hoping maybe it'll fly over Tucson on its way to LA here over the next couple days.
Right, that would be great. Well, they say space flight is a sport, and apparently flight in general is a sport as well.
Yeah, it is. It's certainly has some of the elements of unpredictability and excitement about it, and I think a lot of people, especially in the Clear Lake area, are really excited today to see Endeavour fly over. I've only seen Endeavour I've only seen a space shuttle on top of the SCA on 1 occasion, and I think it wasn't, I'm not sure exactly, but Endeavour, Discovery, or Atlantis came over Houston several years ago on its way back from Edwards, and it was something. It's a sight to see.
Absolutely, I think this is the first time I've seen it and again, SCA is the shuttle carrier aircraft that is carrying Endeavour on top of that. Yeah,
it is. It's it's an amazing feat, to stick something that heavy, 195,000 pounds, on top of another airplane, successfully get it in the air. Obviously with that amount of weight and drag, that airplane cannot go as far. That's why they stop. I think Well, usually at least once, maybe a couple times going across the country. That airplane burns a lot of gas with the space shuttle on top.
I'll bet. So let's get back to, obviously, the space flight. And we interrupted today's show, the ISS update, where we are normally talking about space station, but obviously space shuttle relates to that, as space shuttle was integral to the construction of the space station. So I want to talk about that first flight. You were talking about the multi-purpose logistics module. We also call that Raffaello. In fact, on that mission, you worked the shuttle's robotic arm to lift that module out of Endeavour's payload bay and berth it to the space station. Can you tell me a little about that experience?
Well, I could try. I could barely remember it. It was 10 years ago, but with those MPLMs or any module, I mean, you use initially, like in our case, we used the space shuttle arm to pull it out of the payload bay. This was before the space station had its own robotic arm. And, just very carefully attach it to in our case, we attached it to the bottom of Node 1. And then it takes a little while to get the hatches open and, we pull out of the cargo out, and over a week-long period, unload it and reload it with stuff and button it all up and put it back into the payload bay. Again, very carefully. That arm moves, it moves pretty quick, but you try to be really careful with it. You certainly don't want to damage anything, or worse than that, even hurt anybody. So we're very careful about it. We put it back in, and that was an early space station assembly flight. I can't, really hard for me to say. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of times those robotic arms, the shuttle and the station arm, have been used to construct this amazing facility that we have in space.
Yeah, now you flew both Endeavour and Discovery, and despite the updates that Endeavour had from Discovery, I understand any differences between the two orbiters aren't exactly detectable from the inside, but the space shuttle is, revered as an unprecedented space flying machine. So talk to me a little about the muscle behind the machine, the space shuttle system, and its overall capacity.
Well, the interesting thing is, on the launch pad, when the space shuttle is fully fueled, it weighs about 4 million pounds. But the thing that we're trying to get into space, which is the orbiter, empty, weighs about 195,000 pounds. So the rest of it is basically fuel and propulsion system. So you need more than 4 million pounds of fuel and propulsion system to get that space shuttle moving, from 0 to 17,500 miles an hour in just 8.5 minutes. I mean, it's an incredible feat. When you look at just the sheer difference in size between something like the space shuttle and the Soyuz, it's quite impressive. And, it's certainly the most amazing spacecraft that people have ever designed. At least I think it is. And, hopefully one day we'll get back to having a reusable winged vehicle. But in the meantime, we need to build something that is, hopefully much safer and less expensive. And that's the road we are currently on with the commercial crew program for people.
Right, thank you. Well, listen, let's fast forward a decade from that first flight and 3 space flights under your belt to Endeavour's final flight. Also, your final space flight. It was your second assignment to serve as commander of a space shuttle. During your training and leading up to flight, your wife, then U.S. Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords, was shot after an attempted assassination on that terrible and unforgettable day back on January 8, 2011. As your wife recovered, together you both made the decision to stay the course and fly. And it was obviously a sound decision, as you commanded the mission with the utmost professionalism, leadership, precision, and skill that I have ever seen. Tell me about your final flight experience aboard Endeavour, that also delivered the alpha magnetic spectrometer to the space station, and the significance of that final flight.
Well, thanks for the compliment there, Amiko. It was a tough time, for Gabby, and certainly for Gabby. I mean, she was in the hospital during that entire period from January 8th until well into June, after I landed. And the decision for me to go back and fly that flight was a difficult one. I'd been training with my crew members for about a year and a half at that point. So it certainly made sense, for me to, to fly the flight. We temporarily had a backup commander in C.J. Sturkow, was a very capable guy. But, I knew the mission really well, and I knew my crew members, and they knew me. And it certainly is one thing that, Gabby would have wanted me to do if she was involved in the decision. Unfortunately, at the time, it was really hard for her to, express what she was thinking about, about the flight. So ultimately, I did make the decision to go back. It made that period of time in my life rather difficult. On the third day of the mission, literally while I was rendezvousing with the space station, she was having brain surgery. So it was
challenging time. I
Well,
would say.
it was challenging. It was challenging from a compartmentalization standpoint.
Sure.
The ability to focus on what's important now and forget your personal life.
Sure.
And it was a tough time, but the mission went off great. We got everything done. We got that $2 billion cosmic particle detector attached to the space station, and it's working and producing some significant amount of data that are being analyzed as we speak.
Absolutely. And tell me just a little about the alpha magnetic spectrometer that you brought up to the space station.
Well, in my opinion, this is certainly the most significant scientific experiment that the space station has or will ever have. It is if listeners out there have heard of the Large Hadron Collider, which is a super collider which breaks apart atomic particles to look at what those are made of, this is kind of like the test section of that instrument. So it's got the similar kind of sensors, and it's examining the background radiation. It's examining the particles that are flying through space, and it's looking specifically for antimatter. In the beginning of the universe, because the universe was created out of a vacuum, it was assumed, or is assumed by physicists, that there should have been equal amounts of matter and antimatter. For all the matter, there should be antimatter because it came out of nothing. Well, we don't know what happened to all the antimatter. It may be out there somewhere, but we're not sure where it is. And we haven't actually detected naturally occurring antimatter. So that's one of the big things that AMS is looking for. Would be a pretty remarkable result if it was able to discover that antimatter actually exists naturally in the universe. We can make it. Can be made in a super collider. Only lasts for microseconds.
Sure, great. And obviously, we know that space matters. So the space shuttle, obviously a tested and proven space vehicle. What's next for NASA? You kind of touched base on that. What type of vehicle is it going to take to continue that natural human quest of space exploration?
Yeah, so right now we've got nothing. I mean, we rely on the Russians to get up and down to the space station. That is not an ideal situation by any measure. It's really not where we want to be, but it is. The Soyuz is a reliable spacecraft. We've got a lot of folks that have flown on it, including my brother, and but we need to build something else. So the program we have currently is called this Commercial Crew Program, and there's a bunch of companies out there, notably SpaceX, Sierra Nevada, Blue Origin's, X-Corps, that are trying to give us this capability back to launch people into space. And, you got to give SpaceX a lot of credit out there. They've launched and rendezvoused with the International Space Station, brought cargo to the space station. More importantly, they were able to successfully bring cargo home, which the Russian Space Agency can't even do. The progress burns up in the atmosphere. SpaceX is able to deliver cargo to and from the space station, which is a very important step in delivering people to and from the space station, and hopefully sooner rather than later, SpaceX will be on its way to delivering cargo, or to delivering people to and from the ISS.
Right. I
So
understand.
we're, full disclosure here, I serve on their safety advisory panel, but I think they've done some pretty remarkable things.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. Any final words on Endeavour as she makes her last trip in the air?
Final word. Well, tell the pilots when they land, it would be great if they could fly over Tucson. So Gabby and I could see Endeavour. It's on the way to L.A. I don't even think they have to go out of the way.
That would be great. Well, any plans to visit when once she gets to LA?
Absolutely. I'm supposed to be there. Now, I don't know if the schedule's changed, but I was there for another event the same time Endeavour was supposed to be moving through the streets of LA to the California Science Center, so I was planning on being there and seeing that, but with the weather delay, I don't know if that's changed. So I'll have to find out in the next week or so.
Right. Well, we're coming up on almost a year from October 1st. That's actually when you retired from the U.S. Navy as captain in the Navy and NASA as an astronaut. 25 years in the Navy, 15 years at NASA, correct?
Yes, something like that, yeah.
So, I guess that was the last flight also for you as an astronaut, but also as a Navy captain.
That was it. That was the last time I, flew anything in the Navy, was landing the space shuttle on June 1st of last year. And I actually hadn't flown an airplane until this last weekend at the Reno Air Races. So it was over a year, and it's something I want to get back into.
Great. Well, Endeavour flew 25 missions, 299 days in orbit, 4,671 orbits, of which you flew 2 missions, 27 days in orbit, 434 orbits. I did my math. Thank you, Mark, for taking time out there in Tucson to talk with us on such a momentous occasion. And thank you for your service to our country and our space program. And please give our best to Gabby.
I will do that. Great talking to you, Amiko. Have a great day.
Great. You as well.
Bye.
Space Shuttle carrier aircraft with Endeavour strapped atop coming in for its landing at Ellington Field. Touchdown.